Hi again, everybody. Welcome into another edition. This is Cross Functionality, the show connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female, hosted by former college baseball and softball players. I couldn't do the show alone. I couldn't do it without my friend and co-host, softball national champion at the University of Alabama, and current day renowned coach, Cassie Riley Boscia. Cass, what's going on?
Thanks, Jim. I'm good. It is 70 degrees today in New York, but rainy
Yeah.
and cold. So we will take it. This is our warmest spring day of the year.
So you didn't get any snow last week. No
No,
rain. Although on opening day, I heard
it's a little
that
chilly.
it was 39 degrees.
It
Yeah,
looked nice. The sun
it did.
make it look nice, but it was very crispy. There gave you that like, ooh.
A little pinch in the air, right?
Mhm.
Episode 34 today. And I want to give you full credit because you came up with this topic idea,
Mm,
but also the title too. A lot of times we'll collaborate on the title for those who don't
yes.
know,
Mm.
the audience listening and watching on the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. Episode 34, Hourglass of Focus, pregame and postgame preparation and getting into that proper mindset. And that's a really good title that you came up with.
Well,
Hourglass of Focus. Very smart.
it's usually just a topic I talk about, but Jim, you do a lot. You do just about everything for this
I
podcast.
know, but I'm
So
just saying, the
I,
top,
I don't need that
sometimes
that credit. Thank you,
the
though.
the title, the title sometimes, I could use Chat GPT for a
I
title,
was
but
just using Chat GPT.
you were.
Yes,
However, I wonder how baseball players and softball players are going to eventually use artificial intelligence. Well, they do, but
yes,
use it
I'm
more.
super curious.
Use that AI a lot more. Chat GPT.
Interestingly enough, I actually just got out of a meeting yesterday with one of my former teammates. Trained her
Hmm.
since 2014. She's in a doctoral program at MIT right now,
Hmm.
in an engineering biomechanical program. And what her study is measuring elasticity of your muscles, essentially. So you'll be able to know like when the stretch shortening is starting to happen and not happening, and where the break in momentum is. So when you watch,
Yeah.
she's specifically looking at pitchers. So when someone is pitching, you'll be able to tell like right away where the break in the chain is based off of this, technology that she's developing in conjunction with, I think it's called Reboot, which is a technology company that's working with MLB right now. So super cool. So AI
Yeah.
is definitely, we basically just said like coaches shouldn't have to have a master's in statistics in order to be a great coach.
I'm wondering, and another thing too with coaches, if they have to learn machine learning, if that's going to be a
Yeah.
qualification,
Hmm.
not just something that people might want, but an actual qualification going forward, machine learning.
I know, University of Iowa, I think I brought this up. University of Iowa managers
Hmm.
almost always have some type of statistics or computer programming background because they're
Yeah.
trying to take all this data from Blast and from Diamond Kinetics or TrackMan or whatever, and try to come up with something because we have all this data for coaches, and we just kind of go, "Fun." By the way,
you know,
make
it's
sure your
it's
players are happy and still developing and doing all that.
it's inevitable that
Yeah.
blast motion, TrackMan, K-Vest, Diamond Kinetics, that all of that is going to go out of style, for lack of a better term. It's
Mm.
going to go away for something even better. It's just the evolution. And with AI and the way that Chat GPT, and there's some copycats of Chat GPT out there. By the way, my Twitter timeline, I don't know about you, what about your Twitter timeline, but my Twitter timeline, for whatever reason, this is where the technology part is really annoying to me. My Twitter timeline is filled every single day I log on with technology or AI information, and
Mm.
my brain gets overloaded with all of this stuff that they say. And so when I go and try some of this stuff, it works to an extent, but there still needs to be that human element to it. But I don't know about how your Twitter timeline is, but my Twitter
I
timeline
really try
is
to hack the algorithm. If I see something that is
oh
not pertinent to like my Twitter is so baseball, softball swing oriented. Like it is so one-sided. I could probably expand a little bit more, but if anything doesn't relate to that, I click it and I say I'm not interested in this tweet and it goes away.
I don't know how. Yeah, I should do that, but there's something in my brain that says just hold on, don't do it yet because you could actually learn something even
Nope,
further.
it's fair. Yeah, yeah. I'm talking. I get a lot of recently political tweets that people think I would
Really?
like to
Yeah.
consume. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
Um, yeah. So we're talking today, episode 34, Hourglass of Focus, pregame and postgame preparation. And I'm really
Mhm.
looking forward to talking about this today. By the way, Next week, we'll be discussing establishing proper goals as the
Mm,
season has opened up for Major League Baseball. The college baseball season soon enough, and college softball season will be coming to an end, and the regular season anyway, and we'll be going into the postseason, into
mhm.
tournaments, and then the big tournament coming up for both baseball and softball. So we are full underway here. The off season is over. You're telling me it's 70 degrees, so the off season should be over in the Northeast
Yep.
officially. But next week, we'll be talking about that episode 35. This week on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, we talked episode 136 about managing expectations and how
Cool.
players can go about that, managing expectations
Mhm.
in their season, not really pointing to a goal that's impossible, but managing your goals, managing your proper expectations to really put together a good season, both baseball and softball.
Sure. I think that's especially this like perfectionism mentality, or we've talked about comparison being the thief of joy.
Mhm.
If I had a bad game, I didn't have to go on social media and see how many good games other people had. So when you have this expectation that you're going to go through for three almost every time, it's not that you become okay with failure. And we've talked about this. You start to just view, okay, it is what it is. It happened. Now, how do I learn from it and move on? And I think we sometimes get stunted by that based on what our expectation was.
Um, by the way, so that's the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast this week, episode 136. So please subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify, and watch on YouTube, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. But I have to ask you something. I heard this in the gym. I was in the sauna and my AirPods happened to die on me. Worst time for them to die, right? I'm listening to this young kid in the gym talking to another kid who's I think he was from Europe. I don't know, but he was more of a soccer fan, a football fan, as it were. And he's this kid who was kind of sitting next to me, or at least on that same high bench as I was talking to this guy from Europe, and he was explaining college sports. And he talked about how the big schools, Alabama, Texas, I don't know, throw a big school out there. I don't know, Ole Miss, I'm sure. I watched The Blind Side, by the way, the other night.
Very
Great
good.
movie. Great movie. And Michael Orr went to Ole Miss, for those who don't know. That's
Yes.
why I brought that
Mhm.
up. Anyway, this kid was telling this other guy how Alabama and these big schools the football team has their own mansion. They have their own teachers, their own classrooms. Is that you were in the athletic department? You were there, obviously. You were an athlete there. Is that true? Let's dispel some of these rumors and some of these myths and maybe some truths about these big
Sure.
colleges.
So I know athletics in general has
Mhm.
their own dining hall. Athletes room with other athletes. Typically, there are situations where that's not the case, but for the most part, football has dorm rooms where it's other football players there.
Mhm.
They have specific times in the weight room where they can go in the weight room, and there's not going to be other people there. I see it coming. It's not there yet, but as of right now, football does not have its own weight room. Let's say.
Okay.
As far as classes go, there are a lot of classes that typical football players will typically take, based because based on scheduling and stuff, it makes sense, and especially in the general ed core classes that happens. But as far as a mansion for themselves,
That's what I heard. That's what this kid who was probably
that I
23,
have
24 was
never
saying.
heard of.
Okay. All right. All right. Well,
So
we just dispelled that rumor.
maybe at other schools, but
And what bigger football schools are there than Alabama, though?
do you know what? Maybe with new NIL money, maybe
Oh God,
players are purchasing large homes and like I don't know, maybe certain players
maybe
have big homes, but it's not like the university is supplying it.
that's true. That's
So
true.
I guess
Maybe.
that's maybe difference.
Can you imagine you get an NIL deal? If you're like, say, Cooper Manning, you get an NIL deal. You're 19 years old, and you can just buy a house
Why
and
not,
have a
right?
bunch of people.
Turn it into an Airbnb later on.
That's right. That's right. Oh, it's NIL. Oh my God. I don't see like AI. I'm not as optimistic about it as I
Mm,
once was with the
mm.
NIL and the AI. I'm not optimistic about the NIL deals and hearing some things that are coming out about it. I was a little bit, but I'm not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a big learning curve. Everyone's
Yeah.
gonna have to learn what to do because it was kind of just like a free for all. There's not a ton of rules and regulations. So I think everyone's kind of learning how this is gonna pan out, and I think like anything, it kind of gets a little bad before it gets better. Maybe
Yeah.
you have to hatch through some bad. So
Yeah.
we'll
And
figure it out.
eventually, like AI, it's all going to turn political, and that's going to be a key political point
Ugh, yeah.
in the years to come, I'm sure, because that's how
Well,
everything turns into nowadays.
We'll see.
Episode 34, Hourglass of Focus, pregame and postgame preparation. If you don't have those two things, though, their chances of getting an NIL deal are going to be very low. So you have to have those two things. And
Right.
it's something that is oftentimes overlooked. Along with, like, say, sleep, for example.
Mm.
Right? I mean, so many athletes, they don't get their proper amount of sleep, and a lot of times it's hard. I'll say that, but I'll acknowledge that. But a lot of times too, athletes just kind of disregard their sleep, and they disregard actually putting together a good pregame and postgame preparation plan
Mhm.
that could help them get to the spot they need to get to play well, and then at the end of the game to get back into the right mental state to where they can get ready for the next game. And I think it differs from, obviously, from every sport. Both baseball and softball differs from, say, football, from basketball, because baseball and softball, you pretty much play back to back every day.
Right, right. Well, I have to give credit. I was first introduced to this from a performance psychologist or performance, psychologist, Brian Kane. And he was somebody who came to different schools, was just teach about mental performance. And he did this really cool thing. There's a concept called steal like an artist. An artist comes up with a painting, but what he or she did to come up with that painting is you stole all these different ideas and concepts, and now boom, you make your own thing. So he did a great job of stealing from all these different ideologies and then coming up with a great plan that worked for the team. So he had introduced this particular idea of an hourglass of focus, how to get really zoomed in and then zoom back out after a game, let's say. But he originally got it from a surgeon. And so the story he told is that a surgeon could be, let's say it's a he. He's a husband and a father. And let's say, he's leaving and there was an argument at his house and his kids weren't behaving. And now he has to get in the car and go to surgery. And let's say he's still pissed off about what happened at home and he's walking into surgery, and the family or the person that he's operating on sees the surgeon walking in, like distracted, flustered, not doing, and goes into surgery. And so they gave this whole example. And something could happen in surgery that is less than ideal. And then you come home and you still have to have a completely different role. And now your surgery is affecting this outside role. So this is great to get you locked in and focused for when you need to perform, but then also being able to leave the game, leave practice, leave whatever at the field so that you can then go out to dinner with your family or be a sister, be a brother, be a, whatever you need to be a student. So you have basically certain things that lock you in. An example of this particular surgeon's day, and I stole some of it for myself as an athlete, but number one was like a pregame meal or some type of pregame ritual, right? So pre-surgery meal, whatever it was, he knew that was like on days of surgery, he was eating that meal. Some type of visualization. And every time he's doing one of these things, he's kind of getting more and more locked in, more and more focused, right? He gets into the car, he listens to a certain song or listens to a certain mantra, something that says, okay, this is the song for surgery day. And then he stays in the car, he takes a deep breath, shuts his phone off, leaves his phone, let's say, in the car, and then he gets out of the car and he tries to get big. And he's like, trying to feel like the most confident person on the planet, right? So that's like getting into surgery. And we can go through this, and I don't want to talk
Well, if I
word vomit
may,
too much about this, but this is
no,
obviously then translating to the game.
you're making good points. If I may, my uncle happens to be a heart surgeon,
There you go.
and I'm sure that he has something very similar
Mhm.
to. I would argue heart surgery is probably, along with brain surgery, brain surgeons, heart surgeons, that's probably the hardest in the medical field and the most stressful. I would imagine that he has something very similar to what you're talking about,
Mhm.
where his ritual to get him into that, for lack of a better term, zone, so he can perform surgery.
Yeah, and, when I talk to athletes about this, I see them sometimes drifting, and they're like, "Ugh, why does this matter that much?" And we end up having to have a deeper conversation about focus because we say, does it not feel the best when you're at the plate and you just feel so locked in, you feel so zoned in, the ball looks this big, the ball looks like it's slowing down, the game in general looks like it's slowing down, you're achieving these states of flow. And they agree. They're like, "Yeah, that feels the best." And I was like, "Well, that's not just going to be a light switch. And yes, maybe sometimes it falls into place for you and you didn't even realize it did, but why not be able to create a roadmap for yourself to give yourself the best chance of being in those high focus positions?" So, um, the main piece is we don't want to create all of a sudden this massive pregame routine or this massive postgame routine that is so steers so far off from what we are normally doing because you're never going to actually implement it. It's the same reason why when people try to implement a weight loss routine or a workout routine, and it is so obtuse to their normal day-to-day actions that they can't be consistent with it, right? We want to try to find anchors throughout our day that we normally do. So, do you normally eat before a game? Awesome. Let's find out what that pregame meal is, and let's keep it fairly consistent. Do you typically journal? Great. Attaching onto journaling, we're going to add a little bit of visualization. Boom. Do you typically ride in a vehicle to your game? Probably. Let's figure out what you want to listen to on days of games. The big thing that like I get a big eye raise with is, hey, are you going to shut your phone off before you head into your game? And they're like, oh no, it's on silent. And we've talked about it before, just how distracting our phone can be to us. But just even if our phone is in our bag and we know there's a potential for it to be operating, whatever it may be, the fact that the actual act of shutting your phone off is very therapeutic for us to be like, you know what? I don't have anything else I have to worry about right now except the next 2-3 hours, however long I'm going to be at this field for. And that's it's very nice. You get to shut the outside world off, school, relationships, whatever it is. Boom, I'm an athlete right now. Yeah. The next anchor is, that surgeon says he gets big walking in, trying to be super confident. You're walking into the field. You're getting very, you're trying to be like, man, like I get to play ball today. Like, what does that swagger look like? You're not carrying the weight of the world of like, oh, I have to do all these essays later. I have to do whatever later. The other thing too is in college, you get changed at your clubhouse, but you might in high school be getting changed in a locker room at the high school or at home, whatever it may be. That is a very crucial opportunity. That's a big anchor that's layering your focus where you're taking off whatever clothes you normally wear and you're putting on your Superman outfit. You're putting on your uniform. And that is a huge focus layer of like, because you don't wear uniforms on a normal day. That's like a big indicator of like, whew, it's game day. I get to wear a uniform today. So you're getting yourself super zoned in for your arrival at the game. And then you would have a similar way to come out of the game. Right? Doesn't matter if you're 4 for 4, 0 for 4, you're coming out of the game, you're taking your uniform off.
I would argue it's probably the hardest part too.
Yeah. You have, maybe you have your journaling routine, your visualization routine, you're zooming back out, you get in your car, you listen to whatever music, you get home, then you turn your phone back on. And then maybe you have something, you have your post-game meal, you have something else. So you've zoomed in a similar manner, and then you can zoom out in a very similar manner. And that is for the actual game, but you can have mini hourglasses of focus for your at-bats, how you lock in for your at-bat, and then you come back out to go play defense, how you lock in for, Yeah. So those are, I think those are really good conversation points. If you're a parent that's driving in the car right now with your kid, or if you're a coach listening to this, I think this is something that it's not that different from what kids normally do. It's just bringing our attention and our awareness to, oh, I'm getting more locked in. I'm getting more locked in. I'm getting more locked in. That I think can be really helpful for people.
And if you are listening, thank you. Please subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. New episodes every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can watch the show on YouTube, Softball Strength Academy YouTube page, previous episodes of this show, and clips as well. Let's add some context to this. What was your pregame routine like for you in college? We'll just take college. Just high school's kind of.
Yeah, it was definitely, I learned this. I'm sure I had something in high school, but I very much so learned it in college, and it helped me. It stuck with me a ton. But so game day, it was about 2 hours before I had to leave. That's kind of like what started the top of my Hourglass. It's crazy. Just even thinking about what I just got that little bit of like, that little rush of like, whew, it's game day. Like, like those little tiny butterflies.
You wake up, sometimes you wake up and get that rush, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I think the reason why this is also important, because I would wake up for an 8 p.m. game and be like, oh man, it's game day. And if you try to start prepping at 8 a.m. for that 8 p.m., you're gonna severely like tire yourself out emotionally, drain yourself essentially before you even get to the game. So you're kind of giving yourself, okay, 2 hours before I have to leave, this is when it's going to start. I liked journaling. I liked watching video. There was a couple of like Nike commercials I would watch. There was a Michael Jordan commercial I used to watch, and I would just sit there. I'd watch those videos. I'd write down just how I was feeling before the game. So similar to what we've talked about in our journaling, write down what my mental goal was, my physical goal, anything else that was on my mind when it came to that game. I'd set a 5-minute timer, 5 to 10 minute timer to visualize. I had a pregame meal and laughing, I don't ever eat this now, but it was just a peanut butter sandwich with green tea.
That's not bad. I still eat a peanut butter sandwich and green tea.
I know, but it's funny, like something that was like such a staple, is no longer, I like
no jelly.
No jelly. No, it was peanut butter with green tea.
I personally always found those Uncrustables, no offense to them and their company. I always found them kind of gross though. Uncrustables will not be sponsoring Cross Functionality.
I don't think I ever have had an Uncrustable, I'm going to be honest.
They're
Yeah.
not that, no,
Okay.
they're kind of gross. I
I'll
don't like
pass.
peanut butter and jelly. I like peanut butter on wheat, and
Mm.
I'll throw in, whatever. But green tea. Also, too, what people don't know, green tea gives you a lot of energy, and it's a good supplement that counters coffee. If you're not a big
Yeah,
caffeine person,
it
or if you're
wasn't
not a
even
big
the
coffee
caffeine
person.
effect, it was more of just like, I don't know. You know what probably happened? I probably had it one time and had a phenomenal game and was like, "Well, that's it."
But was it
Peanut
cold
butter
green
sandwich,
tea or
green
was
tea
it
every
hot
day.
green tea? Was it hot or cold?
It was cold. It was an
Okay.
iced, or is it not even ice, but it was just not a steeped one.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
so I would get in my car. My song was "Fool in the Rain." It was a remix, a Led Zeppelin remix by the band OAR. It was just about this right amount of time for me to get to the field. So that was the song. I'd shut my phone off in the car. The only reason I wouldn't ever leave my phone in the car is if it was an Alabama day where it was like 100 and something and your phone melts in the vehicle. So, but phone would always be off.
Yeah, it would
Um,
turn off automatically because it's overheating.
I mean, yeah. So I would turn off, it'd be either in my bag or if it was a cooler day in my car. And then I just remember walking in feeling like as I was getting closer to the field, just that I was in this phenomenal mood. There was a giant Superman logo on the door, and that was indication you were taking off the clothes you were wearing and you were turning into your Superman outfit, right? I'd get changed. I'd say hi to everybody who was in the facility. I'd go do any type of rehab that I needed to do. Couple of distinct moments. I used to write "Your Best" on my wrist, and that was just. I remember standing before the national anthem on one of my first games on television, starting to get nervous, and then thinking, okay, I'm very confident I'm not going to give anything less than my best. And then so whatever happens, I need to be solidified with this idea that I gave my best type thing and whatever happens happens. And that was very calming for me. So that was maybe one more journaling routine, wrote "Your Best" on my wrist, and then I was off for the game. And that was that.
How did you get into you explained it there, but how did you get into that mental state of euphoria
Mm.
where you felt everything was free, everything was easy, and you felt 100% fully prepared, ready to play your best and confident that your best talents would come out during that game?
I think it's probably a combination of what leads up to it. You know, you practice so incredibly hard in the off season and throughout the week. Um, but a lot of people will go through that practice, but then either not intentionally go through that practice or still think that they're not doing enough. And I think
Yeah.
we just had this culture of buy-in where this was the plan. We're going to stick to our plan. We're going to give our best effort. And it's like if you're trying to pay for a Mac computer, let's say, and
Mhm.
it's very expensive, and before you even pick it up in the store, you pay $100 a month for 12 months, and you show up and you're like, "Yeah, I'm picking up what's rightfully mine. I've paid for it." And I think that was our mentality. We felt like we had made our payments, and then when we showed up on game day, it was like, "Well, we've just paid for something now. It's our time to pick it up." And I think everyone bought into that.
So, how much of this, of your routine, when I say this, how much of that was applicable to practice? How much of it transferred over?
Sure. I had certainly had, variations, so I didn't
Mhm.
have the same meal, it was a little bit different. I didn't listen to the same song, it was a little different. I didn't listen to the same videos, I made it a little different, but it helped so much, especially, as a student, I needed a physics class my senior year that was only offered 1 to 2:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays,
Mhm.
and so I missed, like, 30 minutes of practice. I didn't get to go to the field as early as I wanted to. And I remember walking over to practice on those days. I had a slightly adjusted hourglass of focus that I was implementing on those days because I was listening to certain music, listening to certain videos in my headphones, and then I would kind of go through it a little bit quicker, a little bit more condensed, if you will.
Mhm.
But it was very helpful because again, if you're intentful about journaling, maybe I did my journaling the morning for practice because I knew I wasn't going to do it right before. I was intentful about, um, if I needed to visualize, it wasn't going to look exactly the same. I didn't have time to just sit there and close my eyes. I was visualizing in a little bit of a different way. But just how important taking off I don't know, just something about putting a uniform on was just so
Yeah.
special to me. And I tried to just be very intentional about it. Even my practice jersey or my practice clothes was very intentional about like, you get to play softball today, not all right, I have to go to practice today. It was like, no, I get to do this. I get to do this. It was just trying to switch that mindset a little bit more.
You know what's one of the most underrated sayings in sports right now? And I just my opinion. It is, and you can email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, by the way, if you have any question about this topic and previous topics that we've talked about. But this is so underrated. It's if you look good, you feel good, you play good,
Mhm.
And to your point right there about you mentioned something about putting on a softball uniform, something about putting on that red, the burgundy maroon, right? Is that the
Crimson.
crimson? What did I say burgundy for?
I don't know.
I'm
But it
sorry.
is the Crimson Tide.
Yeah. If we don't have a show next week, you'll know why. Because um, so the crimson, putting on that crimson
Mm,
and putting on the white pants, the socks, whatever.
mhm.
You know, it, there's something about that, knowing that you're going out there looking your best, that attributes to your mental state and getting prepared for a game. I think,
So true. It is
right?
so true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
I
people who say, "Don't worry about how you look, just go out there and play." No,
mean,
it's not correct. It's simply
well,
just wrong.
I think there's something a little different too about a female, like, that's used to having their hair done and wearing makeup. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, people would laugh at, like, some of our girls would, like I I wanted my hair to not be a mess, but I my a lot of my teammates brought, like, their curling iron to the games and, like,
I was
had a
gonna say,
full face of makeup.
did you ever wear makeup during a game?
Not during games, no, because I
Okay,
remember, like, I just wasn't I don't think I wore makeup till I was in my 20s, to be honest with you, like, in general.
okay.
Like, maybe if it was a really nice event, I would, but
Not even
it
had
was
like teenage Cassie on going on a date.
no, no
You didn't
teenage
even wear
Cassie going
makeup
on a date.
then.
Nope. I
Oh,
I waited I don't know why. It was one of those things I didn't know how to do it. Maybe if I had the internet and I could have, like, searched,
TikTok
like,
back
these
then.
things, you know what I mean? I didn't wanna talk about it with my mom, even though she would have done it in a heartbeat. I was just like, "Nope, I'm here to play ball." I was a little bit different, but in the sense too, I always thought if I had makeup on my face, I'd forget it was there, and I'd end up rubbing my eyes, or I just wanted one less thing to have to
But
worry
you wore eye
about.
black too, right? So
I
that's,
did. I
that
know.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
important.
so it is, Mike Candrea was a, coach for the University of Arizona Wildcats. He just retired, 2 years ago, and legendary coach, but he had coached males and females, and he actually said girls have to feel good to play good, whereas
Mhm.
guys need to play good in order to feel good, and I thought that was a really
See,
interesting concept.
I'll say this,
I know we've talked about that.
I think with guys though too, you have to still feel and look good.
I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
agree.
Because
You know
the cameras are always on you now. There's
Mhm.
and it's not just TV cameras. I'm
Right,
speaking from the
your
point of Major
phone.
League Baseball. But you've got phones, right?
Yep.
I mean, college sports now, games are on television, and I mean, you could, even if you're not there, you could still take pictures, and you could still take videos on your phone and still post it online and still get people to react to it.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's why, to me, the devil's in the details, and
Mm.
looking good, feeling good for both male and female athletes is just as important as part of your pregame preparation, I think, in 2023, as anything going
Yeah,
forward.
it's a great point. Yeah, and it's like, if parents or coaches are kinda shaking their head, like, not quite understanding it, it is such a real thing, and it's kind of
Yeah.
one of those things you just every single kid is on display, you're right. Regardless if they're being televised or not, they're gonna be on display or on some type of stage, and they're very, very aware of that at all times.
So what was your post game? What was that like? Your post game routine and trying to get out of that state of focus and playing and just
Mhm.
sort of easing back into post game regular life.
Yeah, so after that post-game meeting, I would if I needed any type of treatment, I would take care of that first. So you have, like, any type of cool down, any type of recovery that I would do, and then when you go back into the locker room, taking that uniform off, a lot of us didn't actually shower at the locker room, we'd shower back at our apartment, but taking the uniform off or showering, something along those lines, I think that's very therapeutic. You're taking the game off or you're washing the game down the drain. You're putting your other clothes back on. Um, Journaling a little bit more, so if I needed to empty my thoughts about the game, good or bad. You could go 4 for 4, and that's just as valuable of a journaling opportunity as when you go 0 for 4, if not
Mhm.
more, right?
Sure.
So just getting anything out of my brain, and then, if you're playing on a Sunday and you have Monday off and then practices it until Tuesday, there's a lot of space for you to potentially forget how you're feeling or what you wanna work on, and I think that even though you're like, "My family's in town, I wanna go have dinner," whatever it is, what am I aiming based on how this went today, what am I aiming to work on next week? Because then when you open your journal Tuesday afternoon, let's say, to talk about practice, you see right away, you know what? I was really struggling with this here. I want to translate this to the week. So anyway, journaling was huge for me, especially after the game. Um, I'd go and say goodbye to everybody. And I think it wasn't just a goodbye. If I still felt like there was part of the game lingering, sometimes being able to talk about it a little bit to a teammate or a coach was helpful. So I went and say goodbye. I would kind of be testing. I'm like, all right, do I feel like I have any residual feelings about this game that aren't going away?
Yeah.
Walk to my car. I'd listen to I Feel Home by OAR on my way home. It was just OAR was my favorite band at the time. Pulled into my apartment, turned my phone back on. I think I turned my phone back on actually to play the music, but I don't think I would check my phone. I would just turn it on, play music, come back to my apartment, have my post-game meal, whatever that may be. It was just something that I just always had a rule. It had to be hot. I didn't want to have a salad after a game. I wanted a warm meal after a game.
So what were some examples of, are we talking soup?
I'm
Mac
big
and
fan of soup.
cheese?
No, chicken, veggies, and rice. That was like my go-to.
Okay.
Bag of frozen veggies, a thing of
What
rice.
kind of chicken?
Grilled chicken, chicken breast.
Okay.
Something easy.
We're not talking rotisserie chicken.
No. Yeah.
I've always found that kind of gross.
Yeah, it depends on the chicken. It depends on the place you get it.
Grilled chicken.
We had a Piggly Wiggly down the street. I did not get my chicken from there. It was an actual.
Never heard of Piggly Wiggly. Now, have you ever heard of it was a grocery store? Wow.
Piggly Wiggly, yes. Had pig's feet, had a bunch of different.
That is as southern as it gets.
Exactly.
Have you ever heard of Steak and Shake?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I haven't eaten fast food since 2018. Little known fact about me, but the last fast food I had was Steak and Shake, and I occasionally get cravings for Steak and Shake.
There you go.
Steak, like the actual burger and the bun.
I don't know if I've ever had it. I've heard of it, but I don't know if I've ever had it.
It's really good. The fries though are a little too chunky for me.
Okay, good to know.
Piggly Wiggly. All right. So next time I go to Alabama, I'm gonna try to stop into Piggly Wiggly. So they had your post game meal there, grilled chicken,
rice.
Are we talking brown rice or white rice?
Yeah, like brown. Uncle Ben's brown rice in the microwave.
What kind of veggies?
Like a mixed bag of frozen veggies, like the string beans and carrots.
And you had this after every game?
Not every single one, but it was something along those lines. Or if my family's in town, that was always nice. After like a big win, like going out to eat with a bunch of people, that was always fun.
Yeah.
Especially like when come playoffs, if we had just played on ESPN, you'd go to like the sports grill or whatever, and then they'd be recapping our game on the TV. So that was always super cool. So
you'd see yourself on TV.
Yes.
So like, hey, did you ever turn away, kind of like, oh, I don't want to watch myself?
You know what? No, I think we were usually, if we ended up on TV, it was for something good. If after a loss, we weren't going out to eat to watch that.
So if you lost or if you had a bad game, did you ever change the post game meal? And I'm serious about that question.
Yeah, you're right. If it was a really bad loss, yeah, it was something bad. To end the season, we'd get like milkshakes, burgers, and fries.
I'm gonna say maybe some ice cream.
Yeah.
They didn't have Halo Top back then. Mind you, I'm talking 10 years ago, so I'm not talking, a million years ago. I'm not trying to age us here, but I don't think they had Halo Top back then. But athletes, if you have to cope, there you go. Halo Top. It's a good, healthy ice cream product.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? A lot of us during season wouldn't eat fried food because you're in the South, you're traveling southern town to southern town. It would have been so easy to just consume fried food almost every week. And so we said, okay, no to fried food. So usually at the end of season, our first big meal was fried food with some.
Of course. When you guys were traveling, I'm curious now, when you guys were traveling, did you guys eat a lot of fast food? What did you do meals wise?
There's a couple of there's not, in New York, there's delis, they're not changed. They're just like some delis here and there. And they don't really have that in the South or really anywhere else in the country. So things like McAllister's, Panera Bread, Nukes.
Panera's great.
Yeah, those types of things that had some healthier options were usually what we went to.
So no McDonald's, no Burger King.
No.
Yeah.
At least not for me. I don't remember ever really seeing that for our teammates. It was we at least were trying to be health conscious, even though, you're not going to be perfect on it,
So what would you take away from today's episode? The main points for athletes, giving them advice and getting into that proper mindset pregame, getting into the nice routine that could get them into that proper mindset, and then being able to cool down post-game.
I think the biggest thing is just being intentional about what you already do. If I was going to say there's a step one to this, step one is just sit down and try to write down what you think you already do. What are typical things you do most of the time before a game? What are typical things you do most of the time after a game? And then you just try to apply a little intentionality to it. So everybody here is getting dressed before a game, but are we actually being intentional about saying, I get to play softball today? Or maybe we have a mantra as we're putting the uniform on. Everybody here is probably taking a shower after the game. Are we being intentional about like trying to wash that game down the drain so we can let it go and focus on the next part of our life? So I would say just write down what you typically do. I have a worksheet I work on with my athletes where it's actually kind of the shape of an hourglass and you're writing in the hourglass type thing at what point, how much more focused you're getting until you're completely locked in the middle. And then how do you focus back out again? And listen, people might have something completely different. The songs might be different. You might watch something different. Some people call a person or a coach before, whatever it is. Try to see if you can get one for a game. Try to see if you can get one for a practice, and then see what works best for you. But I do think that testing period of time where you're like, okay, this is awesome. I really feel like this is working for me. This part right here, probably not going to be for me. It might be for someone else. I think that's what's best.
Well, a lot of good information in today's episode 34, and follow us on social media at Jim Tara, at Coach_CassieRB on Instagram, at Coach CassieRB on Twitter. Next week, we talk about establishing proper goals. Very important for athletes. It kind of ties in with everything we always talk about, but establishing proper goals and making sure that the goals are reachable, making sure that they're not too incredible to the point where you just can't reach them and then you get frustrated with yourselves. And athletes, I've noticed, do fall into this trap. I don't know if you ever have, but athletes fall into this trap.
Oh yes, no, for sure. And I think goals without a path are just kind of just floating in space. So I think that's gonna be a big topic of conversation too. If you can't outline how you're going to get there, then is it really just a dream instead of a goal?
What is it? A dream or a goal without a plan is just a dream?
Oh, I don't know. Is that, maybe that's probably why it's in my brain. Yep.
That's probably
that sounds about right.
We'll figure that saying out next week and we'll discuss episode 35. Thanks for listening, everybody, and joining us. And again, be sure to subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify, and watch the show on YouTube, the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. And we will talk to you next week.